I'm going to tell you something that you probably don't want to hear, but that you need to hear. And that's that doing random influencer workouts is never going to get you closer to your fitness goals. Sure, they might make you sweat for an hour, maybe two, but they're severely lacking the substance that is going to get you to those long term goals. So, in this video, I'm going to give you the trainer's secrets to keep progressing long term because I believe that everyone should be able to make progress no matter what their budget is. If you're new here, welcome, and thanks for spending your time here with me. My name's Noah, and I've been a full time personal trainer for the last 5 years after graduating from my bachelor's of kinesiology. And I'm just trying to cut through all the bullshit that's out there in the fitness industry and simplify things so that you can make progress in the easiest way possible. And if that sounds good to you, let's just dive right in. Now, before I give away any trade secrets, we need to start by defining what progress is to you because everyone is going to have a different fitness goal. Not everyone is trying to do the same thing. Now, I can't do that for you, but I'm going to give you some of the most common examples of what I see working with my clients. First, and probably the most common workout goal is weight loss. But what a lot of people don't even think about is the major benefit that muscle building has on losing weight and keeping that weight off long term. Now, if you're curious, that's way too much to dive into in this video, but I did make a video on that I'll leave linked in the description at the end of the video. Now, the second is less common, but probably just as important, if not more important for a lot of people, and that's mobility. And this is extremely common in my older clients because they start realizing how much more difficult it is to do the things that they took for granted when they were younger. Like even tying your shoes can become difficult if that's something you just don't work on. So why not improve your mobility before it gets to the point that you can't even tie your shoes? Then I'll just rapid fire a couple more. The third is decreasing joint pain. Another one is injury prevention or rehabbing from a past injury. And then another one is just feeling more confident about yourself. And I'm sure there is so many more out there that I'm not even thinking of. But these are the most common that I see in my practice day to day. So don't necessarily take it as gospel, but use it as a guide to define what progress is to you. Now that you've defined what your goal is, we're going to dive into some of the training principles that are going to get you that progress that you want long term. But one major caveat that I need to mention before we dive into any of these, and it gets left out of a lot of content online, is that you're not going to be using all of these at once. You're only going to be using one or two of them at a time. So don't panic if you're not able to use all of the principles we'll go over in this video at once. That said, the first training principle is one that everyone and their moms is talking about online, and that's progressive overload. Which sounds simple, right? You just keep progressing and wait forever. But there's a lot more nuance to go with it than just progressing forever. Because when you start out, you're gonna be making progress so much faster than someone who's been lifting for a long time. It's why we don't see people lifting buildings. Your progress starts to level off the longer you've been doing it for. So to keep making progress, sometimes we need to shift our focus from progressive overload to some other training principles and look at other ways that we can overload the muscles other than just adding reps or weight forever. And yes, sure, if you keep adding sets to your workouts, that is progressive overload. But you can only add so many sets before you start spending too much time in the gym. And most people don't want to be spending 2, 3, even 4 hours in the gym 6 days a week. It just isn't realistic for the average person, which is why we need to look at other ways to progress. And this transitions us into our next training principle perfectly, and that's your training intensity. And this is actually the total opposite of your training volume, which is just the total amount of weight and reps you're lifting in a workout. The more intense your workout is, the less overall lifting you're going to be doing in that session. This is why you'll see power lifters just sitting around for a lot of their workout because that intensity is so high, you can only handle so much of that in the session. So let's use a real world example here. Let's say you've been doing squats and you've been doing 10 reps of squats for months and you've been slowly increasing that weight over time because you're following progressive overload. But then you've hit a point where it's been 2, maybe 3, maybe 4 months or longer, and you've been stuck at that same weight with the same 10 reps. you could actually benefit hugely from dialing back your reps and increasing your intensity. That's going to increase the weight that you're lifting, but you're just going to be doing less reps. That's another great way to progress. And that actually pairs perfectly with our next training principle, which is training variation. And this isn't that bullshit out there that you need to confuse your muscles. But we do want to go through training phases where we're changing things up periodically. And these phases are anywhere from 4 all the way up to 16 weeks, depending on what we're addressing in that phase. And the biggest reason for that is we don't want to develop any imbalances because even the best programs still won't address everything. And it can also be a great way to re engage you with your training because everybody starts to get bored of doing the same thing every so often. But you also don't need to overcomplicate changing exercises up by doing squats on yoga balls or some crazy shit that's probably gonna get you hurt. So let's do a simple example. Maybe you've been in a training phase and you've been doing just normal barbell back squats. A great exercise to change things up would be to just going to a split squat. This is gonna help you find any imbalances you might have between your left and right leg. It doesn't need to be an overcomplicated exercise to change things up. Most of the time, the basic exercises are all you need. Then there's your workout frequency, or in simpler terms, how often you're working out. And this is something that I see way too many beginners overlook because they think they need to go to the gym 6 days a week because that's going to be ideal. But spoiler alert, it isn't. Because when you go from not exercising at all to exercising 6 days a week, it starts to feel like too big of a commitment. And then what happens? You start to feel overwhelmed. So then you just give up altogether. Can more be better? Sure. But why not make progress by just going 2 days a week? Because so many people overlook recovery because what most people don't realize is muscle growth actually happens during the recovery process. You're just breaking down the muscle fibers during the workout so that they can come back and build stronger. But working out too much is almost like watering your plants too much. Watering your plants too much, you don't give them time to grow. It's the exact same thing when it comes to building muscle and working out too much. And you might be wondering about a workout split where you're just working out one muscle group per session and not hitting it again until the following week. So let's say it's chest day and you do 4 exercises for your chest on chest day, then give yourself a week off until you come back to it then a week later. But why not disperse those 4 sets of that chest exercises throughout 3 different workouts throughout the week? One, you're going to be able to keep those 4 sets at a higher intensity. And two, it's going to feel like way less work, especially for when you're starting out. Then the last training principle is reversibility. And this is something that pretty much everyone who's gone to the gym and then stopped has experienced. And basically, what it means is that if you stop doing what you did to get to where you are, you're going to lose it. So, in simpler terms, use it or lose it. And I find this is something that a lot of people just really don't want to hear because they just want the quick fix to get them to their goal. And then they never want to think about exercise again. But that just isn't the reality on the ground. Because sure, it might take a little more work to get to where you want to go. And then you have to do some maintenance work. Maintaining it isn't going to be as much work as it takes to get there, but you still need to keep doing it. And that's why I talk so much about habit change on this channel, because those quick fixes rarely work long term. Usually they're going to have you end up right back where you started. But imagine if you start with just one small change at a time, like maybe adding an extra 1,000 steps in a day and just letting different habits snowball like that. Imagine where you could be in just 1 year, or 5 years, or 10 years, or even 20 years. Imagine what your life would be like then. So just stick with it, and I promise you, you're gonna get to where you wanna go.